Hi everyone, here's the Bookchemist once again, and in the last few weeks I've been publishing on my Patreon page a news bulletin sort of article called This Week in Literature, where I collect some of the most interesting articles or short essays or think pieces or interviews from across the world of literature online, which I found may be of interest to you too. It's still in sort of a beta. It's something I've been willing to do for a long time, and I'm still trying to understand how these things should work, how long should they be and such. So do take a look at it and let me know what you think. And one of the articles that piqued my interest last week was an article on Bandcamp, actually, about a record that Ursula Le Guin supposedly recorded in the 70s to go along her science fiction novel Always Coming Home, a sort of folkish experimental music record to give you a sense of how this science fictional, this fantastical world sounds like. And that sounded amazing. I'd love to read that book while listening to the record, in order to, immerse myself as much as possible in this fantastical world. And that got me thinking about the best pairings between music and books, and about a question I've been asked a couple of times in the comments to my videos, which is whether I do listen to music while reading, and the answer to that is, of course, yes. I listen to music pretty much all the time while I'm reading. Occasionally I alternate between stretches of a few hours when I listen to music and a few hours of silence, but I found that it helps a lot. It helps me a lot to focus when I'm listening to music when reading, and I suggest you try it with other types of activities that require a long effort, such as writing or office work. I couldn't point precisely at where I read this, but I think there's some scientific truth behind this. The idea is that when you're listening to music, you already have a sort of background distraction, so that when you start to get distracted, your mind can bounce against this background distraction and immediately come back into focus. Whereas if you are immersed in silence and your mind starts wandering, it may come back half an hour, 1 hour later. And I found that to be absolutely the case with me. It's so much easier for me to keep focused when I'm reading, if I'm listening to music, especially if I'm say on a bus or on a train. And the other reason why I do that is because I love music. At the same time, not all music genres and not all artists work. Most notably, I'm a huge fan of hip-hop and rap music, but I really can't listen to hip-hop while I'm reading, because I find that the lyrics, the words, tend to distract me too much. I focus too much on the words, and I can't focus on my reading enough. That is not only true of hip-hop, it's generally true of most music genres where the lyrics and where the singing has plays a major part, is majorly important. It doesn't happen, for instance, that type of distraction does not happen with metal music, and I'm not saying that to mean that lyrics are not important in metal music, God forbid, far from it, but I find that with much metal music, the lyrics and the singing tends to meld more easily with the guitars and with the drums and bass and with the general music of it, and I do not find the singing so distracting, especially with some types of extreme metal, with some types of death and black metal, and atmospheric black metal in particular. Especially the folksy variety with, the folks instrumentation coming in once and again. It's excellent music to read to, if you ask me. Electronic music also works excellently, as does some types of post-punk or dark wave or whatever. I find that Italian music, I'm an Italian native speaker, is generally speaking much more distracting to me, probably for the very simple fact that I tend to understand every word that is sung in Italian, and that is not always at all the case with English, so there's an element of that too. I wonder if that happens with English native speakers, and if that's why many people can't really listen to music while they're reading. What about you, by the way? Soundtracks too, of course, also work brilliantly. I in particular have a couple of video game soundtracks I listen to all the time. Nobuo Uematsu's Final Fantasy soundtracks in particular, especially the 7th and the 8th, are not only among my favorite pieces of music ever recorded, but are also the kind of thing I listen to all the time while reading. In the description box, I'll give you a list of some records, a quick list I'll jot down of records I like to listen to while reading, which I think you should try. These are not in any way my favorite records, even though some of them are. They're just records, albums, which I think would work well if you want to try that type of background distraction I mentioned, if you want to try to immerse yourself in a book more by using music. And of course, do listen to albums and records while you are reading. If you just listen to songs, either because you pick them on your phone or iPod or whatever, or because you have created a playlist, I'm not sure that would work. I think that the constant change between artists and style may be too distracting, but let me know about your habits in any case. When it comes to combinations, I'm not so certain though. I've often experimented with specific combinations, with associating a genre or artist to a writer or to a specific book, but I haven't really had much luck on that front. I tend to associate music and books in a bit of a random way. In the description box, I'm going to put a link to an article on The Guardian, the British newspaper, which talked about this precisely and offered some interesting pairings between specific artists, music artists, and specific writers. But among the pairings listed there, the one that I think will probably work the best is the one between Cormac McCarthy and Godspeed You Black Emperor. The bleakness of it all is going to be soul-crushing, but it sounds like an awesome pairing. Also, Beach House and Margaret Atwood, especially Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, may work too. Otherwise, I'm not too much of a fan of specific pairings. Recently, I've been reading Providence, the graphic novel by Alan Moore and Jason Burrows, together with The Serpent's Egg by Dead Can Dance, sort of folksy, gothic-y, new dark wave sort of stuff. It was an awesome experience, but it was more an exception, that type of specific pairing, than the rule with me. What about you? Do you have some specific pairing between a writer and an artist or genre that you'd like to recommend? Do you listen to music while reading? Do you find it too distracting? Let me know about your own experiences in the comments below. Thank you as always for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please subscribe, that will be awesome. And in a second you're going to find links to a couple of videos on the screen. I'm going to link my video on my favorite Cormac McCarthy novels, since I mentioned him, but that's an ancient video, so the quality is going to be, who knows, probably poor. And I'll link another video that may be of general interest to you. Let me know what you think about This Week in Literature too, and thank you again. Bye, guys.